Start
The
off.
broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for some of you and good evening for some others. Welcome to this webinar, this gold standard webinar on the transition of your CDM AR project. We will start the webinar right now. The time here in Europe is 2 o'clock in the afternoon. The webinar, let me start by introducing myself. My name is Peter van Mitwoud and I'm a Director of Business Development for Land Use and Forests at the Gold Standard. Concerning the webinar, a few things. The webinar will be recorded, so you can listen to the webinar afterwards as well, or give it to your colleagues. If you have questions during the webinar, please type them into the question box that is in the right of your GoToMeeting panel, and we will try to answer your questions after the presentations. We have a bit more attendees than expected, so it might be that we cannot work on all the questions. We will see how far we get through. We've reserved about an hour for the webinar, but we normally assume that it will take about 45 minutes given the content and the presentation we want to work on with you. I should tell you that we have a newsletter system in which we regularly update the forest carbon market participants on the latest news of the gold standard, on new guidelines we have out, on market trends we have. If you would like to subscribe to our newsletter, please also type this in the question box and we will make sure that you are subscribed to the to the newsletter system. I'm gonna share my screen right now to start the first presentation. Right, let's see. So this should show the screen. I'm just looking at my colleagues who are double checking here in the office. So again, welcome everyone. You see that this presentation will be done by Peter van Mitwoud, who's speaking at the moment, and Maurice Vorer, my colleague, who will do the second, more technical part of the event. I hope you can all hear me well. If not, then also please type that in the question box, so every kind of communication with us can go through that box. As said, the webinar is on an AR CDM, ARGI, and also VCS projects that would like to transition to gold standard. We have made a special transition guideline for them, and I will start with a little introduction to gold standard and our land use and forest program, and then Moritz will take over to go into the more technical details of how our transition guideline works. To myself, I'm a forest and nature conservation scientist from Wageningen University, working at the gold standard since about 5 years. My main work is with stakeholders and input to the various UN environmental processes and events. I used to work for the carbon fixed standard before this transition to the gold standard. And as I said, I'm today the director for our land use and forest program, mainly working on business development and stakeholder involvement. Most of you will be familiar with the gold standard. I'll give a little introduction for those of you who are not. In the world, there's a lot of different quality standards today for various things. The space that was taken in the past maybe by social and environmental standards, now there's also other standards coming in that focus on other assets. And if we look at the spectrum of ecosystem services that we have right there, these are the kind of different fields standards operate. Sustainable forest management, social and environmental safeguards, agriculture, and of course the carbon component. And if we look at the world of standards that is there right now, there's the typical more carbon-related standards like the Climate Action Reserve or the American Carbon Registry. There's other standards traditionally focusing on forest management, where carbon was not one of the assets or things they've been focusing on, and probably will not, especially as an add-on. They might include this only in their programs, like FSC or CCB. There's other more traditional standards in the market focusing on agriculture and social and environmental safeguards, like the Rainforest Alliance or Fair Trade International. And we are, in fact, a bit in the middle of all this, working and coming from the carbon world, but as gold standard historically also focusing very much on the social environmental safeguards and sustainable development impact that our projects are having. We have over 1,000 projects worldwide that we work with in various regions, as you can see on this map. The number of land use and forest projects that we're working with is steadily growing. Where do we come from? We're a non-profit foundation from Switzerland, and this is also where our headquarters still is today. We were founded in 2003 by WWF and other NGOs that were concerned that the payments for carbon reductions as agreed under the Kyoto Protocol would really be a race to the bottom for the cheapest carbon and not really stimulate sustainable development or bring countries on their way to green development. The idea of gold standard was to turn a payment for carbon reduction into a payment for sustainable development, whereby carbon would be the currency, but the impact of the payment would be much bigger and also focusing on other areas. And that's what we do, and that's what we have been doing in the past 10 years, ensure the sustainability of climate projects, originally from the UN Kyoto Protocol, but of course more and more working in the voluntary markets as well. We don't do this alone. Stakeholders are a very important base of the work we do. And in fact, we work on behalf of a large group of stakeholders. And some of you might actually be part of the different consultation and different groups we have here. Over 100 stakeholders give regular input to our standards and the way they should develop. And I've only listed a few of them right here, so you get an idea with whom we are all working to make sure that our standards are not only technical standards, but also are carried and believed in by those who actually use it in practice and those who want to make a difference in the world when it comes to carbon reductions and sustainable development. Traditionally, gold standard has focused on energy and energy efficiency projects and giving out carbon credits for these projects. But since a couple of years, we're also working in the land use and forest area. And the background of this is, of course, that in the international debates, we're more and more talking about holistic approaches, which is the right thing to do because reality is holistic. Everything is related to each other. But for us to go into the land use and forest space, really from a carbon perspective, some important decisions had to be made. And the important decision we had to make is how do we deal with RED, reducing emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. This is, of course, a very important topic on the international agenda. And I think we all agree that it is very important for the future climate balance of the planet to combat these emissions from deforestation and forest degradation. The question is how? And with our energy projects, in particular the cookstove projects, where we were already impacting deforestation in the countries where we implemented them by reducing the pressure on the natural forests. And we decided to take this concept further. So the land use and forest program of Gold Standard is really about reducing the pressure on natural forests and make existing practices more sustainable. And that's why we focus on afforestation and reforestation. And this is where, of course, this webinar talks about today. We're working on methodologies and guidelines for improved forest management. And we have recently, at the COP20, launched our agriculture standards. And this together is our approach to RED. We combine it with the work we're already doing on the energy. So more and more we feel integration of our standards and methodologies, so we can offer you in the market a complete package of opportunities. Different finance streams might actually result in paying for these emission reductions. It can be the traditional carbon market through its offsetting mechanisms, but more and more we're working with companies interested in insetting and understanding the carbon footprint they're having through their supply chains and how we can help them. As said, this is our actual approach to that. We are also, and some of you see this already in the markets, we have always been looking at various additional aspects to only the carbon. For us, again, carbon is a payment for sustainable development. That's what it should be. And therefore, all our projects have approved and verified co-benefits. And whether this is education or indeed the protection of watershed systems, maybe in combination even with our water standards, this is all activities we include and we believe should be included. We have two very important partners in our work, the Forest Stewardship Council, FSC, and Fairtrade International. With them, we work together to make sure that you in this world have more to do than only working on the certification of your projects. We know from, in particular, land use projects in this world that they're very unhappy with all the different standards and schemes that they have to work on, whether it's a combination of organic and fair trade and carbon reduction and maybe CCB and gold standard, everything together. And of course, this has never been the purpose of our work. We want to make sure that projects are set up in a sustainable way and are delivering on the promises they have. So we work with Fairtrade and FSC to streamline our requirements, to streamline our criteria, and to make sure that if you have a fair trade or an FSC project, that you don't have annoying double certification of things that you have already been doing for other standards. So we want things to be pragmatic. We want you to set in place the right safeguards, but we don't want to create another administrative system for something that is already in place. And that also explains why we're working on a transition guideline for existing AR projects that are not yet part of the gold standard. Why is it an interesting idea to transition? As you see, this picture of a banana market in Central America shows that if you get people paying for your product, there will be people starting to produce your product. This is a very clear symbol of a high demand for bananas where people start to produce them, bring them to market. And of course, this should be the main observation, the main consideration when you want to work with a new standard is, will there be an extra demand and will there be additional benefits for me? Is there a market that I'm actually meeting there? There is. The latest state of the forest carbon markets 2014 found that gold standard in the land use and forest space at this moment is getting the highest prices in the market. This is very good news for us. We have always believed how important the role of finance for the forestry sector can be, the role of climate finance. But we also see that there's many projects struggling to make an additional project that is really having this new things built into it that you would not see under a baseline or under a business as usual scenario. Restoration of rainforests, making plantations in countries where perhaps no one would invest before. This is all beautiful cases that we see, but they need finance. So this good price is really promising that we see it in the market. And we're very happy that with the Gold Standard Land Use Program, we have been able to maintain this benchmark and this impression on the work we're doing. Demand is increasing. I have asked my colleague this morning for the latest figures on the transfers and retirements that are done under gold standard. And since 2010, we see a steady increase of 50 to 100% every year on transfers and retirements that are made under gold standard. That means that the market is there, people believe in what we do, and our approach makes sense. And this is the last point I want to say about why I think gold standard might be an interesting option for you. We really wanted to create a standard that is of high quality, but not unnecessarily complicated. And I think we did very well. Those of you who are familiar with our AR standards will definitely see that. And we did this by taking the best know-how that there already is in the world, as defined by the IPCC, but simplifying it into something that makes sense and that you can actually work with. So just to give you an example, the emission from burning the biomass of baseline, under the IPCC, this would be the kind of formula you would have to look into. Under gold standard, we translate this into emissions of baseline burned is baseline minus biomass times 10%. And this is baseline biomass times 10%. And this is the kind of simplifications that we really like, because the outcome is the same, but people start to understand it. Our business is not, and I'm sorry for consultants that might be on the line here, but our business is not to make the carbon world creating business for consultants that are then have to implement the projects that have to use complicated systems that they themselves came up with. We want to make protocols and standards that normal foresters can work with. Never it will be 100% the case. We always need further know-how. But we also don't need to unnecessarily complicate things, because it will dramatically hamper the scale up that is so much needed in the market. So I think if you read our standards on afforestation, reforestation, but also in agriculture, you will appreciate this very much. I will now hand over to Moritz Vorer, our colleague, the technical director of Gold Standard for the Land Use and Forest Program. And I will hand over the screen to him to give a more detailed insight on how the transition guideline actually works. I am looking into how to now give the dashboard to Moritz. Somehow that doesn't work yet. I cannot click on the panelist. Yeah, maybe you, is it this one? Make presenter, Moritz Vorer, there we go. Yes. Moritz, there you go. I think the screen is with you right now.
Excellent. All right. Hello, everyone. So this is me, or at least a picture of me, and I'm a forest engineer, forest environmental engineer, and worked in a CDM reforestation project in East Africa for a while. So I'm quite familiar with what you're struggling with if you're going through CDM registration. And then as a consultant for the World Bank, later on for the Carbon Fix Standard as leading the technical team there. And now I'm here, the technical director in Land Use and Forest at the Gold Standard. And yeah, I just give you an overview. I mean, the certification processes I think you're familiar with, but I just repeat shortly. If you are a project developer, you're planting the trees, you're going into the documentation according to the criteria of our or any other standard. You're taking this to the third-party auditor. You do a validation in the beginning, verification at the end. For Gold Standard, it's called initial certification, and then later on performance certifications. And with this, you get your carbon credits, which you sell into the carbon market and the voluntary carbon market, mainly if you are an AR project. And with this, you can finance your project. So this is the simplicity you have in this market if it all works fine. The development where we're at, and now I'm coming to the world on where we're working at a standard, we have the status quo. We have 3 different scopes in our set of requirements. This is AR, IFM for improved forest management in agriculture. And I just give you a brief overview on where we are at the moment and where we will go. And after this, I will go right away into the guideline. but I want you to see this overview because I also want you to see if you're then working within our system where we are heading, and how we are getting more and more simple in this regard, also for you to be applying the standard. So what we have is we have requirements on sustainability and the methodology for AR currently in one document. And we have, in the last couple of years, worked quite a bit on different guidelines. This could be the guideline for smallholders or microscale, but also, for example, for mangrove projects and other special types of projects you are having here. And here you also have this transition guideline, which is especially designed for AR, because we have had a demand from project developers coming to us and saying we need this guideline because there are certain interests for us to be transitioning to gold standard. In IFM, we have not worked so far in real depth, but I can assure you we are preparing quite a lot in the background. On agriculture, as Peter has mentioned, we have been working on the sustainability part the entire last year and been launching our requirements here at the COP last year. And if we're looking at in 2015, we will look into the agriculture sector, especially on working with the Cool Farm tool, and here different components. This might also be interesting for your AR project if you have an agriculture component which you want to certify additionally, because here we are working closely together with the so-called Cool Farm Institute. They developed a Cool Farm software. It's a tool, and with this tool you will be able to calculate your emissions. So we are moving a little bit away from the normal approach of developing methodologies, but we will see more and more softwares which have the methodologies integrated into this. We will see also in 2015 that we will get a split of the sustainability part and the methodology in the AR version, and this is a strategic split, because you will then see in 2016 eventually that we will have a sustainability requirements which go across all land use activities. And so we will in future only be dealing with one requirement set on sustainability, and we are currently even looking beyond land use and forest to be maybe even going on energy to really have this one-fits-all approach in here. So you will see, as said, sustainability requirements across the scopes, and then the Cool Farm tool, especially in agriculture, and we will see also in forestry that there will probably be a methodology toolbox, maybe also a software coming which will unite the forestry activities, and just to make it also more simple for you to be integrating different activities. Now I want to move into the real thing here, the transition guideline. If you look on our website currently, in the AR section, you will find the transition guideline down here. And there is a separation on AR CDM and AR JI and the VCS, because they have different rules. So there are slight differences between the guidelines. You can further see up on the top, there are the requirements, but what you should be interested in are the templates, because what you need to do if you are transitioning, you eventually take the templates and you fill them in. So what we don't want is that you create something new. You have been putting lots of work, lots of time in your existing documentation, in your existing certifications here. And so we firmly want to avoid that you put additional large efforts into this. So what you need to do is eventually you will take the templates and you will fill them in, and what we want is that you reference to your existing documentation. So the reference might be the PDD page 23, and in this paragraph, criteria 1 is described, and additionally there's a supporting document, this and this. I think you know this from from how you have been going through certification before. Same you do with other criteria. If there's a criteria which is then additional to what you have done before, then please provide us with a description. In reality, this looks like this. This is just a screenshot from one of the templates, so one of the social safeguards eventually. And here we're looking at workers shall be able to establish and join a labor organization. And so first of all, you have to say, is this relevant or not relevant for me? Then you put in the reference on your existing PDD, for example. And the question is then for us, do we need to monitor this, or for yourself, do you need to monitor this? Is there a future risk of non-compliance? And you rate this. If this is medium or high, you need to monitor it. And eventually, once you have filled this in, we will check this. But I come to this step in a second. But eventually, that's how it looks in reality here. It should take you maximum 2 weeks. So we have tried this with already 2 project developers, and they used about a week for it. So if it takes you more than 2 weeks to fill all your documentation in there, there's something wrong. Please give us a call. So it's really not rocket science here. Very straightforward. What we have also done, you will see in the transition guideline, this is a screenshot of the transition guideline of AR CDM, that there is the terminology is different from gold standard to UNFCCC. So you can see here what are the different terms being used for. Going into the process, what we see here is, as I just explained, the project developer downloads the templates, fills in the templates, as we said, it's about 2 weeks. You go with the filled in templates, you go to the gold standard secretariat, so that's us. Send us the documentation, and you get back a so-called CAR list, corrective action request list, what you should still improve. If there's nothing more to improve, all CARs are so-called closed. We approve it, and you have your gold standard PDD that normally is within 4 to 8 weeks. And with this, we give, we as Secretariat, we give a recommendation to our technical advisory committee, and the technical advisory committee still needs to give you final approval, or your project final approval. We are meeting regularly every month, and depending on how much work we're currently having, normally it should go through right away. And with this, you will be able to open your account then at Market, and we will issue your credits. That takes another 1 to 2 weeks. So the entire process will take about 2 to 4 months, rather 2 than 4, if we're looking at this. Cost for this is eventually, as we're reviewing this, it's about $2,000 US, and with this we are covering our costs internally, as we are a non-profit organization. We're really not making any profit on that. The credits, if we're looking at CDM, there will be no more TCRs and LCRs. I'm very sorry for this concept, but it didn't really work out. So what you can create under the gold standard is validated and verified credits, and you don't need to create validated credits. You can also go only for verified ones, but I would say 98% of the AR projects are normally going for validated credits. What does it mean? The validated credits, I think by now, also known for some of you as ex-ante credits, you have the high costs in the beginning of a reforestation project, and the carbon absorption is only coming after years. So you normally have a financial problem because you have to fill this gap, and this is the solution is here with the validated credits. I'm just making this number up, so don't quote me on this. It's approximately 300 tons of CO2 per hectare if we're looking on a reforestation project. And just to give you also, put you in perspective, because some people say, well, validated credits are so much different in their risk than verified credits. We don't see this. We see in verified credits you have the risk of permanence as you have in validated, but in validated you have the additional risk of delivery, but depending on how fast your forest is growing, this might be shorter or longer. But in the long run, what we're looking at is to have this forest there for a long time. So you might see, to be covering additionally these risks of delivery, you might see additional rules and requirements in the gold standard, additional safeguards where we look a little bit better in your revenue models also to see if you are financially viable over time, to really de-risk the projects coming into the gold standard. With this, you can also, under the gold standard, certify plantations, so rotation forestry. You will get less credits for this in a validated way, and still you probably have another cash flow here because you have different timber returns. If we're looking on safeguarding, we're also looking on the buffer. And here, in contrast to VCS, we don't have a flexible buffer system, but we have a flat buffer, which is all around the world, from the United States to Congo to India, 20%. And I sometimes also call it a social buffer because it keeps it simple on the one side and it balances the risk around our world here. And then you can also see that what we are doing is a simplification all across the different land use sectors, which means that all our projects, all land use and forest projects, that's what LUF stands for, have a buffer of 20%. So also in agriculture. We're taking this into consideration that it might be a, let's say, for the ones that's a positive aspect, for the other ones that's a negative aspect, but eventually we take a holistic and simple approach to be moving forward here. What we want to avoid is complicated rules, and which are then later on becoming costly. If we're looking at the crediting period, the project start stays, so that's defined as the project start, and the crediting period needs to be redefined, especially for CDM projects. Well, it depends. They can also have 30 years. So 30 to 50 years is the crediting period. If you have a different one, we need to redefine it. But you might be having considered already to be in between of 30 to 50 years. And eventually we come to the last point. When do you need, because in the transition project, there will no third party be involved. This is a secretariat with a desk review, so will not be on the ground. But the question is here, when is the next third party certification being on the ground? And that's latest 3 years after transitioning, or 5 years after the last third party audit which you have had in your project, whatever is first. With this, I want to leave it up to you and your questions, and I'm quite happy to answer them now. Thank you.
So first questions are coming in already. Thank you, Moritz, for the excellent presentation, and I hope this gave you the clarity you were looking for. I have a question from here, how long it takes overall to, if you would start today, to eventually issue your gold standard credits. Moritz, maybe you can answer that.
That would be, as I showed in one of the slides, it's 2 to 4 months we expect a project to be, that the time takes to eventually get the credits in your account and be able to trade them.
Thank you. There's another question here on why we offer this service to the projects. Well, maybe I can answer that. The gold standard is of course the gold standard. So we firmly believe we have in many aspects high quality criteria. We don't believe that all projects that are AR at the moment under whatever standard would make the transition to gold standard. We want those projects that offer that high quality and that want to benefit from our system to have the opportunity to profit from the gold standard label. So that is the reason it fits in our focus on the drivers of deforestation approach, and those projects who have sustainable development built in to their project design. And we're always looking for a gold standard being able to certify them. They can benefit from this system. Moritz.
I might just
Yep.
I might just want to add, I mean, for the demand we got from project developers is there because they can't sell their credits with the current scheme they are at. So I think that is the base of where we, at least from the technical team, were really pushed on saying, okay, how can we transition the same demand we have seen in energy credits, so in energy projects, and their gold standard has done exactly the same. So I think that's the main base of why we're doing this.
Thank you. There's more questions coming in here. There's another question on how the project can find a buyer for his credits and what the experience is with regard to this. First of all, of course, the role of gold standard is to manage the quality of the gold standard as such, of the certification system. We are not a broker. I know that mistake is sometimes made. But we do a lot of work on demand building. We are working with a broad network of resellers that are interested, particularly at the moment, in gold standard forest and land use credits because they are so new. So we are very happy to connect our projects with them. That is an important thing we're doing, and also I think we're very approachable to help projects to think about the best strategies of whom to work with. We have a good experience, and I won't tell you with which projects, but with thinking with some of the marketing people of the different projects on who would be interested in buying their credits, what markets they should look at, and where there is good opportunities for them to make a business case for their buyers. So although our service officially, of course, is providing the gold standard for certifying your project, we do help you and we do facilitate a dialogue between offerers and buyers on this market as well. Moritz, anything more on that? Or we can go to the next question.
Yes, there are also, if you look on our website, you can see also there are some addresses of retailers which are especially focusing on gold standard credits. So if you want to have a quick look, then look on the website. If not, just write please, he will connect you.
Great, thank you. And thanks everyone for the other questions coming in. There's more and more coming now. The next one is, can a project which is under CDM continue the same for a fixed period and initiate the process under gold standard? So I think the meaning of this question is, can I continue working with my CDM project and start the gold standard process in the meantime, or do I have to directly shut down my CDM activities? I think this is one for you, Moritz.
I'm not maybe fully understanding the question because you will reach a point where it's you need to transition. So if you have already sold credits under CDM, that's no problem. That's normal. Those you can then not transition anymore. But there will be a point where you need to transition in this regard you become part of our system. There is currently no parallel system of any standard where you then have two different types of credits in your account. That doesn't exist. But I'm not certain if I've mistaken your questions, maybe or your question. Maybe you can double check or write again to Peter.
Thank you. So if that was clear enough of an answer, then that's great. Otherwise, after the webinar, you see the email address of Moritz standing here. Don't be afraid to shoot all questions you still have to him. If it's too complicated, he will probably set up a call with you to simply discuss in more detail. That's what we normally do. Thank you also for people that are now starting to subscribe to our newsletter. I see the first ones coming in here, so that is great. So again, if you want to be kept up to date about what we're doing, about our process, you can simply let us know in the question box, the question and answer box, to be subscribed. I have another question here. The question is, so what should I do now? What is the first step to transition my project? Moritz, you touched on this already widely, so maybe you can elaborate a little bit further.
Yes. Eventually what you do is you download the templates today, now, from the website, and you start filling in the different requirements by referencing to your existing PDD. That's what you should be doing. Once you have this, then you eventually, you can already contact me today, but eventually you need to send this information at some point of time to us. And yeah, so whenever you have this ready, or when you say, okay, I will start this process now, and Moritz, I will send it to you in a week from now, either way. But the thing is eventually starting once you filled them in, and you hand them to us as a secretariat. And if you have questions on what to fill in what section at some point of time, or if this will be sufficient to meet a certain requirement, that is exactly the process we have in place to give you feedback with the so-called corrective action requests. So don't be afraid on saying, okay, I now fill it in, I now hand it over to the gold standard, and they will have a look at it. You will get feedback from us and saying, okay, this is something you still need to work on, or this is not sufficient. But please don't be afraid, because it's a process.
Thank you. It seems that we're almost at the end of our webinar. As I said at the beginning, we would restrict this to about 45 minutes, given most questions would be answered. That seems to be the case. I don't see further questions at this moment. We can't repeat enough. If you still want to know things, just contact us and we will work with you. As I said at the beginning, the webinar is recorded, so I will all of you send a link after the webinar where you can still find it again and have another look at it. The newsletter subscription you can still do, and we are very happy that we had so many people interested in this topic. We probably do more often these kind of webinars on new issues or things that are important, so just keep an eye on the newsletter. And I thank you for participating today. I thank Moritz for the presentation, and I look forward to be in touch with all of you.
Thank you, everyone. Cheers. Bye-bye.